Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Cho'gath. This is going to cover top lane and jungle, not so much mid lane as I don't think Cho'gath mid's that viable this season. So starting off with the Keystones, you have two good options in the top lane. You have Glacial Augment and Grasp of the Undying. Both are going to take you in different build paths, and then the minor runes that you're going to run with them are also going to be pretty significantly changed. So starting off with Grasp of the Undying, you're going to want to run this into melee matchups and then into bruiser matchups. And then with Glacial Augment, you want to be running this into ranged matchups top lane and then you'd be building AP. So let's start with Grasping and Dying. With Grasping and Dying, every 4 seconds in combat, your next basic attack on an enemy champion will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, heal you for 2% of your max health, and then permanently increase your health by 5. So with Grasping and Dying, with Grasp of the Undying, you're going to be healing yourself a bit more and then dealing more damage to the enemy on a pretty low cooldown at 4 seconds. So whenever you're playing into the bruiser champions such as Darius, Fiora, Riven, etc., Grasp of the Undying is going to be your advantage against them, as if you can take small trades against them whenever you're pushing the lane, then it's winning. If you can take good trades against them whenever you're trying to CS after they try to stop you, then it's winning. And you also have the benefit of Cho'gath's abilities both being disengaged in his Q and W. So you can kind of control trades of when you want to take them, and then whenever you do take them, you're just going to be at better HP values, and then the enemy is going to be at less. Cho'gath already has a lot of high base damage in his kit, and this on top of it makes those matchups like fairly easy so long that you manage its cooldown properly. And the way you do that is by just hitting minions at the right times, because once you hit the minions, then it's going to be building up, and then after 4 seconds, then you can hit them and proc it. Whenever the enemy initially engages onto you, then it's also pretty solid, as they jump onto you, you cast Q, and then once you turn onto them, then you're just, again, going to heal damage that they initially dealt to you, and then also be dealing more to them. So it's just a great trading tool and makes those matchups even better for you. The extra health gained from it is kind of just a cherry on top. And then once you get to the later stages of the game where you start having a lot of health, obviously dealing more damage based on your percentage max health is pretty insane for Cho'gath. It's like one of the better synergies in the game. For the secondary runes, you have the obvious good option of Demolish, and then the okay option of Font of Life. You're basically choosing if you want to play for lane versus for your team. Obviously, you want to play for lane, playing solo queue, right? In very rare instances would you want to run Font of Life if your jungler is like Graves, Kindred, Lee Sin maybe, the on-hit champions in which you would actually be getting value out of the Font of Life early from the 2v2's top lane. Then there might be good value of Font of Life. If your bot lane is, say, Senna plus any normal AD carry, maybe Font of Life would give you some okay value in team fights, but in general, Demolish is going to be your go-to since you're laning solo top lane, and once you get a kill, Demolish is going to make it so that you can actually get a turret play and then recall at a reasonable time, and then get back to lane before the enemy can have any good response. With Cho'gath as well, Demolish has has scaling based on 35% of your max health, so Cho'gath actually gets way higher value out of this come late game than other champions do. So has that benefit. For the third row, all of these are good options. Conditioning is basically armor and magic resist at 10 minutes. Second Wind is healing. Second Wind is basically good into caster matchups. So think about champions like Rumble, Ornn, it may be even Mordekaiser, where they want to be poking you with their long range abilities early, and then they want to all in you. Bone plating is just for melee matchups, so champions like Camille, Riven, etc. Because with bone plating, it's on a 45-second cooldown, but those champions can only go in around like once a minute, and then after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal 30 to 60 based on your level less. So this just effectively gives you more HP. If you're already at if you've taken any damage at all and the enemy engages on you, they proc bone plating. They have to get through that. You're building up the Grasp of the Undying proc, and then you also have time to cast your Q or W to interrupt them in some way and then turn it all against them. So bone plating is super brutal for any of the melee champions top lane to try to deal with, especially if they have to engage onto the Cho'gath, meaning they have to get on top of him before they can start being useful. So depending on your matchups, um, again, bone plating for melee matchups, second wind for the caster matchups like Ornn Rumble, where they have long range abilities to poke you early, and then conditioning. You would run this if you're in a tank versus tank matchup top lane, which is pretty rare nowadays actually. So champions like Malphite, Maokai, because the interactions with them is kind of going to be whatever. The damage you take is going to be pretty negligible as you're going to be healing it off the wave probably anyways. The whole matchup will probably just be a fight for the minion wave, not so much a fight of the champion versus champion. So if you don't need these laning tools, then having conditioning just gives you more stats come mid game. After 10 minutes, you gain 9 armor, 9 magic resist, and then plus 5%. And then your natural build is going to be into gargoyles later in the game. So you're going to get the more percentage value from gargoyles, just the base stats, and then once you're around 3 champions, it's even more stats, and then just more stats. Fourth rune is going to be Overgrowth. Again, more stats. You absorb life essence from monsters and enemy minions that die near you, permanently increasing your max health by 3 for every 8 minions absorbed. Once you've absorbed 120 monsters or minions, basically just minions, then you gain an additional 3.5% maximum health. I don't know a champion that makes better use of this than Cho'gath does. Like a tank Cho'gath top lane, 3.5% extra maximum health is so crazy. This rune as well is going to give you about a ruby crystal for free, and then also again just multiplicative percentage values on your entire build. So that's that. And then for secondary runes, if you're playing in the top lane, I would recommend Biscuits and then Time Warp Tonic. Biscuits, every 2 minutes until 6, you're going to get a biscuit. The biscuits restore 10% of your missing health and mana, and then consuming a biscuit or selling it permanently increases your mana by 50. This helps offset your mana cost early, as before your first couple of recalls, you just can't have the items to effectively trade with the enemy. And then if you don't end up using them, selling them will still give you the mana. That will help you. It just gives you a little bit of extra gold. It's not too crazy. But then if you end up using them, it helps you in all-ins because it restores 10% of your missing health and mana. So it can give you an extra ability cast. It can give you the extra HP to like survive an all-in. And that's basically that. And then with Time Warp Tonic, this is going to be pretty useful if you're running Corrupting Pot, which you should be if you're running this rune page. There'd be a couple matchups where you could run Doran Shield, but in general, Time Warp Tonic is going to make it so that whenever you use your Corrupting Pot, it's going to immediately give you 50% of that value. But then more importantly, it's going to give you 5% movement speed while you're healing from the Corrupting Pot. This is going to help you chase down targets or evade them. So it's a pretty neutral rune in the sense that it can be used aggressively or defensively. And the utility of it is so high. It will again help you in all ins as it's going to give you more health immediately. And then the extra movement speed is going to help you at all stages of the game until you inevitably sell the Corrupting Pot like way later. And then for the adaptive runes, it's going to be attack speed and then adaptive force armor defaultly. You could also go attack speed, armor, health depending on some matchups, but probably just stick to this. And then depending on your matchup, obviously you want to switch the last rune as the stat offered is going to just give you more resistances. So 6 armor or 6 magic resist. If you're playing into Fiora, Camille, again, Riven, you want to run the armor. And then if you're playing into champions like Rumble, Mordekaiser, yeah, you would want to run the magic resist. So that's the tank page for Cho'gath top lane. And again, you want to be running this into the bruiser champions or the caster champions such as Ornn, Rumble, etc. For the Glacial Augment variant, you want to be running this into ranged champions top lane as you can't contest them and you don't get any value out of Grasp of the Undying because you just don't get to get in melee range of them if they're playing correctly. So champions like Ryze, Cassiopeia, Jace, etc. You can flip the matchup once you complete a Glacial Augment item, so GLP or Twin Shadows. Probably GLP as it's your best first item where you itemize into Lost Chapter. So starting off with the Keystone, it's going to be Glacial Augment. Basic attacking an enemy champion slows them for 2 seconds. The slow increases in strength over its duration. Melee attacks slow up to 45% and then up to 55. Slowing in champion with an active item shoots a freeze ray through them, basically just slowing them more. So with Glacial Augment, it's going to make it where you're itemizing into the ability power items in GLP, Twin Shadows, and then probably Death Cap last item. And it makes it so you use the active item, it helps you line up your Q, and then you just burst the target outright. It also gives you more teamfight utility in certain team comps where you just want to catch one target out or zone them from an objective. And the freeze ray from the glacial augment with Twin Shadows is so crazy, as it shoots out to the enemies. Once it connects with them, it freezes them and all the champions behind them. So you basically stop any enemies approaching a fight, and then if they continue to approach, then they're obviously losing because they're moving into a Cho'gath queue that they have less movement speed to move away from. And if they're already on top of you or your allies, you can use the GLP. It's going to damage them, and then again shoot the freeze ray through them. And you're then just lined up again for a Q, as you're probably in range because the GLP is shorter range, and that's that. There's a ton of utility defaultly in the GLP and Twin Shadow items, but then Glacial Augment augments them to be more useful in skirmishes, objective control, and this just in side laning in general. For the second rune, it's going to be Magical Footwear. You don't get much value out of Hextech Flash or Perfect Timing. With Magical Footwear also, since you're building the GLP first, it's a pretty expensive item, especially for top lane. And especially since you might be losing the top lane matchup early, with Magical Footwear, you're just offsetting the cost of boots, so you're saving 300 gold. And then it gives you plus 10 movement speed on the boots, but that's not really why you run it. The third rune, you have the option of biscuits, but I think you should go with Futures Market, as with Futures Market, you can have a recall timing in which you get Lost Chapter outright at a timing that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And with Lost Chapter, you're going to be able to have control over the wave because you're never going to run out of mana throughout the early parts of the laning phase. So that has huge utilities with Futures Market, so long that you use it for that. And then come mid-game, it will either help you complete Twin Shadows earlier or help you complete Death Cap like way later in the game at a time you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So pretty useful rune. And then with the fourth rune, it's going to be Approach Velocity. Approach Velocity is going to give you it's going to give you 15% movement speed towards ally champions who are movement impaired or enemy champions that you impair. So enemy champions that you land your auto attacks on, your E on, or your Q on, or any of the slow items, so Twin Shadows or GLP. So that just gives you more maneuverability when you're chasing someone down, basically. That's kind of the value of it. So that's that. And then the secondary runes for the Glacial Augment page is going to be Cheap Shot and then Ingenious Hunter. Cheap Shot, damaging champions with impaired movement or actions. You deal 10 to 45 based on your level true damage against them, and this is only on a 4-second cooldown, so you can proc this 3 or 4 times in like an all-in. And it's obviously going to proc on like every single instance of your damage other than your W, or maybe your ult if you're just ulting them outright. Ingenious Hunter, you gain 15% active item cooldown reduction, and then an additional 5% per bounty stack, or bounty hunter stack. The bounty hunter stack is per unique champion, so you kill the top laner once, that's 1, you kill jungler once, that's 1, and etc. This will help you have the Twin Shadows and GLP just on a super low cooldown, so you can be spamming them at all stages of the game. And then with this rune variation, you would want to run double Adaptive Force, as it's all about your AP, and probably again, just change the defensive stat depending on your matchup. So if you're against Jace Lucian top lane, you would run armor, and then if you're against Ryze Cassiopeia, you would run magic resist. So obviously change that. So those are the 2 rune page options for Cho'gath top. They're both pretty good, and then they both have their distinct advantages depending on the matchups. For Cho'gath jungle, it changes entirely. You want to go, let's just do this whole page. Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, and then for secondary runes you can go Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm. You could go Absolute Focus, Water Walking, but Gathering Storm is just going to give you AP no matter what. You could also go Free Boots, Cosmic Insight. I prefer Gathering Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm, as Cho'gath has so much ridiculous scaling on his ult and then on his abilities as well. And then attack speed, adaptive force, armor. So starting with the Keystone, again, this is for jungle. Damaging a champion below 50% health, deals bonus damage, and then you gain more damage on the Dark Harvest proc for every single time you've got a Dark Harvest proc. So in the jungle, you're going to be building Runic Echoes, and then you effectively just function like a one-shot champion. So once you land the Q on someone, you would just flash, silence, auto, E, ult them, and then smite as well. And then they're probably dead so long that you have enough AP, or if you're strong enough, or if they're weak enough. And then with Cheap Shot, again, you deal more damage to champions who movement you impair. So you can do this with your Q, your E, and then also with Blue Smite. So you have a lot of ways to proc this, and again, you can proc it a lot of times throughout a team fight, or throughout a 1v1, a skirmish, a 2v2, etc. And then with Eyeball Collection, you gain bonus adaptive force for unique takedowns. With jungle, you could run Zombie Ward, but with how like one-shotty Cho'gath is, I think Eyeball Collection is perfectly fine. And then Relentless Hunter is going to give you more movement speed. This is obviously useful as jungle, as it's going to help you reset onto the map faster. Then it's also going to help you whenever you're approaching for ganks, which is effectively all you're doing as jungle. And then with Adaptive Force and Gathering Storm, it's just 2 ways to get extra AP for free. And with Cho'gath jungle, you're going to be building Runic Echoes, Sorkpin Boots, Twin Shadows, and then probably a Death Cap. And then that's going to give you enough AP, like pretty consistently, to play with. Since you're playing in the jungle, the attack speed gives you more value, as in your early clear, you need to be able to just get more auto attacks off. It's going to make your E just proc faster, and then you're just going to be dealing more damage to jungle camps early. You would still be running the extra Adaptive Force, just giving you a little bit of AP early, and then the extra armor is super crucial, as you just take less damage from the jungle camps. Cho'gath jungle has a lot of sustain in his kit, and then obviously a lot of damage, so that's why you would run this. Any Aftershock variant or like Summoner Spellbook wouldn't be like as valuable, as other champions just do that better compared to Cho'gath. And since Cho'gath has this advantage of just having so much burst, you might as well spend it in this way. So that's that. All the rune variants for Cho'gath top lane and then jungle. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them, and if this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. Twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. I'll be playing support. Links in the description. Bye-bye, man. I talked enough about Cho'gath. He's a great champion, man. I've loved Cho'gath for so long. I really hope they don't rework him for a while, man. Because like once they change him, you know they're taking away his silence, and it's like one of the few silences left in the game. Alrighty, bye-bye.